Tonight we travel down the Nile. There is no better road in the ancient world, and no gentler one. The river does the walking. All you have to do is float, and listen and let Egypt slide past at the speed of water. It is evening in Thebes. 3,500 years ago, the sun is going down behind the western cliffs, the way it does here, hugely and without hurry, turning the river to a sheet of hammered copper. On the east bank, the city is lighting its lamps. Thebes, the 100-gated, the city the Egyptians simply called the city, the way people do when they cannot imagine needing another one. Smoke rises from 10,000 cooking fires straight up in the still air, like the city is sending the day back to the sky. The Nile itself is the main street, the highway, the well, the calendar, and the clock, all in one slow body of water. Everything Egypt has ever done has happened within sight of it. The Egyptians do not say north and south, they say downstream and upstream. With the current and against it, the river is the direction the world goes. Fishing boats are coming in, low in the water, their triangular sails loose and flapping softly as they lose the wind by the bank. The fishermen call to each other across the water, short, easy phrases worn smooth by daily use. The way river stones are worn smooth, egrets lift off the shallows in long white threads, heading for their roost in the papyrus. A heron stays motionless, committed to one last fish. Our boat waits at the quay, a river barge of good cedar, broad and patient, loaded with grain sacks and rope, and one passenger who is in no hurry at all. That would be you. The last ferry of the evening is crossing from the west bank, carrying home the workers from the funerary temples and the fields, standing room only, everyone leaning on everyone. Nobody minding the ferryman has made this crossing so many thousand times that he is said to do it asleep, and looking at him now, easy at the oar, eyes half shut against the low light. The rumor seems generous only in degree. The quay stones under your feet are warm. They have been drinking sun all day, and will spend the whole night slowly giving it back, the way stone does, the way this whole country does, holding the day's warmth deep into the dark so that nothing here ever has to be cold for long step aboard. Find the woven mat in the stern, under the awning. The crew has made the line fast, and the night will not require anything of you. The copper light goes rose, then violet. The river holds each color a while after the sky has finished with it, reluctant to let anything beautiful go by unrepeated. We cast off at moonrise. Rest until then, the Nile has waited longer for less. While the crew waits for the moon, there is time for one walk, and in Thebes there is one walk above all others. From the riverbank, an avenue runs inland, straight as a stretched cord lined on both sides with sphinxes. Hundreds of them crouched lions with calm, carved faces, each one watching the path with the same expression of mild, eternal patience. By day, the avenue is a parade route. At dusk, it belongs to the sphinxes again, and they are easier company than they get credit for. At the end of the avenue stands the temple the locals call the Southern Sanctuary, its great pylon gateway rising dark against the last of the light. An obelisk stands before it, a single needle of granite, its tip catching a final coin of sun long after the street below has gone to shadow. The Egyptians cap them with metal for exactly this reason, so that the day lingers on the point of the stone like a held note. Inside the gate, the courtyard is a grove of columns shaped like bundled papyrus, as if the marsh had decided to try being architecture. Lamps are being lit along the colonnade, one priest with a taper moving from wick to wick, unhurried, leaving a soft gold seed of light behind him at every stop. Once a year, the god of Karnak sails down to this temple in a golden barge on the shoulders of priests, and the whole city follows, singing for the great festival. The streets fill with bread stands and acrobats and beer in cheerful quantities, but that is a daytime story. Tonight the temple is doing what temples do most of the time, which is stand quietly and hold the smell of incense and let the dark fill them up like slow water. Against the courtyard's far wall lean the festival poles, the long cedar masts that fly the bright pennants on procession days, stored now like oars in a boathouse. Beside them wait the carrying shrines, the gilded river boats in miniature that ride on priests' shoulders with the gods aboard. Egypt's gods travel by boat even on dry land. It is the only dignified way the country can imagine going anywhere. A scribe of the temple has left his kit on a bench by the second gate, the palette with its two worn hollows for black ink and red, the water pot, the reed pens, all squared up and waiting for him the way a carpenter leaves his bench swept. Tomorrow he will record deliveries, offerings, rations, the daily arithmetic of a god's household. The gods get hymns and incense. They also get inventory. Egypt has never seen any tension between the two. A temple goose, sacred to the god Amun and entirely aware of her position, sleeps on one leg in the courtyard, head tucked, unbothered by history. The lamps settle. The sphinxes outside hold the avenue. They are good at it. They have been practicing. Walk back to the river slowly. The moon is on its way up, and the water is already starting to shine. The moon is up, and the barge slips out into the stream. The current takes us the way a good host takes a guest's arm, firmly and kindly, and the city lights begin to slide away behind. Close to the banks, the river grows its green walls. Papyrus, taller than a man, 10,000 soft-headed stalks leaning together, whispering in a language made entirely of consonants. The Egyptians make everything from it: paper, rope, sandals, baskets, and the light boats of the marshmen, lashed bundles of the reeds themselves, riding the water like folded leaves. One of those boats is out now, poling home late through the channels. The marshman knows his way by the shapes of the reed banks against the stars, the way you know the furniture of your own dark house. His pole rises, drips, dips. The drops fall back to the river in little silver syllables. The lotus flowers have closed for the night. They do this every evening, folding themselves shut and sinking a little, and every morning they rise and open again, which is why the Egyptians put them in their paintings of rebirth. The flower has been making the same promise every day for 10,000 years and has never once broken it. Frogs begin their chorus, thousands strong, the oldest choir in Egypt. To the Egyptians, the frog was a sign of abundance, of more life coming, always more. The goddess of birth wears a frog's head, and tonight you can hear why. The marsh is so alive it sings fireflies. Drift between the stems. A night heron, patient as a priest, watches our barge pass with one gold eye and decides we are neither fish nor threat and therefore uninteresting. The channel opens, the papyrus walls fall away, and the great river takes us back into its broad, dark middle, where the current runs deep and smooth. Behind us, the frogs keep singing. They will sing all night. They always have. The Egyptians paint this marsh on their tomb walls more than almost anything else. The reeds, the birds rising, the little boats, not because it is grand, but because it is the good place. The green thought at the edge of every Egyptian's mind when they imagine the next world, the happy fields where the dead live, well, it looks like this. Eternity, in the official view of the oldest civilization on earth, is a quiet evening in the reeds. The marsh smell drifts over the rail, green and cool and slightly sweet water and growing things, and the faint vanilla of the papyrus heads. Doctors here prescribe the marsh air on purpose. They are, in this matter, correct. Lie back on the mat. The next stretch is long and straight, and the stars are out in their thousands over the water. We tie up briefly below Karnak because some things should be seen by torchlight or not at all. The Temple of Amun is the largest sacred building on earth, and it does not feel built so much as grown. A stone forest planted by giants, columns thick as 10 men rise into the dark, and their tops are lost where the torchlight gives up. There are 134 of them. Walking among them is what an ant feels in a field of wheat. Every surface is carved, kings with their arms raised, gods with their patient animal heads and hieroglyphs by the million, the picture words marching in their neat columns, ibises and eyes and little kneeling figures, reed leaves and water lines by day. The carvings shout, by torchlight they murmur, shifting as the flames shift, so that the processions seem very slowly to move. The night priests are awake somewhere deeper in, past doorways we will not pass. The god's shrine is sealed for the night, and the watch priests keep the hours by the stars, chanting softly at the appointed times. Their voices reach us as a low grain in the silence, less heard than felt, like the building humming to itself. Incense drifts out from the inner halls, frankincense and something older, resin and river and 4,000 years of smoke soaked into the stone. The Egyptians called the temple the horizon, the place where the world of people and the world of gods touch edges. Standing here in the column forest in the warm dark, the idea seems less like theology and more like a plain description. A temple cat threads between the great bases on business of her own, sacred and employed. Cats are protected here, and they know it, and it has made them serene. Beyond the columns lies the temple's sacred lake, a great rectangle of still black water, where the priests purify themselves before each watch. A flight of stone steps walks down into it. By day, it mirrors the pylons and the flagpoles with their bright pennants. Tonight it holds the stars so steadily that a priest descending for the midnight washing will seem for a moment to be wading into the sky. Storerooms and bakeries and breweries crowd the temple precinct behind their own walls, because a god's house runs on bread and beer like every other house in Egypt, only more so. The temple feeds hundreds, priests and singers and sweepers and scribes. The god, the Egyptians would explain, is a good employer. The shifts are long, but the dark is quiet, and the bread is reliable. Our torchbearer waits by the gate. The barge crew does not like to lose the Goodnight current, and the river, unlike the gods, does not hold still for anyone. One last look up, where the columns vanish into the dark. Whatever is up there has been holding for 30 centuries. It will hold tonight too. Come back to the boat. Across the water from the living city, the West Bank rises in pale cliffs, and the cliffs keep Egypt's quietest neighborhood. The Egyptians put their dead on the west side of the river, the sunset side, the way you would naturally file something at the end of the day. Behind those cliffs, in a dry valley that holds its silence like a bowl holds water, the kings of Egypt are sleeping their long sleep, each in a painted chamber cut deep into the rock, surrounded by everything a person could need for a journey, and a few things you would only pack if you were a king. There is nothing grim about it, seen from the river. The Egyptians were not a gloomy people. They loved being alive so much that they spent fortunes arranging to keep doing it forever, in a version of Egypt with taller bread and obedient crocodiles. The tomb paintings are full of dinner parties, fishing trips, music, and people they missed, less like monuments to death than like very long letters home. A village of craftsmen lives over there in the desert's edge. The painters and stonecutters who make the royal tombs, they are the only people in the world whose whole job is eternity, and they treat it like any other trade, with apprentices and ladders and complaints about wages. Their lamps are out now. Even eternity's workmen keep regular hours. The cliffs themselves hold the starlight the way pale stone does, faintly as if lit from slightly within. A fox crosses a ridgeline, a small dark stitch in the silver, and is gone about its errand. Along the foot of the cliffs stand the great memorial temples, each dead king's earthly office, where his priests will present offerings and keep his name in daily use for as long as the endowment lasts. The Egyptians are practical about immortality. A name spoken is a person alive, so they carve the names deep, fund the speakers generously, and put the whole arrangement in writing. To say the name of the dead, the proverb runs, is to make them live again. The West Bank is built on that sentence. On the nearer shore, drawn up on the mud, wait the ferries of the dead, the broad ceremonial barges that carry the coffins across on burial days. From the East Bank, where people live, to the West Bank, where they move. Every Egyptian makes the crossing once, by water, with the family aboard and the oars stroking slow. Tonight the ferries rest empty on their ropes. No one is moving house. The peak above the valley is a natural pyramid, a shape the mountain came up with on its own, and a goddess of silence is said to live on it. She is the patron of the whole West Bank. Her name means she who loves silence, and tonight, with the river barely whispering and the cliffs holding still, she is having a very good night. Let her have it. The current is carrying us on, past the sleeping kings, who of all people would understand wanting to lie still a while longer. Sleep is older than the pyramids. It always wins in the end, and it is kind about it. North of the city, the river widens, and the night fishermen are out, each boat carrying one small lamp, so that the water ahead of us looks like a field sown with stars that took root. They fish at night for the same reason the fish wish they wouldn't. The lamp draws the curious up from the deep, cool, dark moths of the river, and the net does the rest. It is old knowledge, older than the temples, passed from father to son along with the boat, the favorite mooring, and strong opinions about everyone else's favorite mooring. The boats are small, and the river is large, so the fishermen sing to keep track of one another, low calls and answers that drift across the water, half song, half conversation. The melody says where they are. The words, when there are words, are about nothing at all. The catch, the current, somebody's brother. The river smooths it all into one sound. The sound of people comfortably at work in the dark. A catch comes up somewhere off the bow. A brief silver argument in a circle of lamplight, then quiet again. Tomorrow that fish will be in the market at Coptos by noon, traded with the speed and seriousness that Egyptians bring to food, which is considerable. The river gives more kinds of fish than anyone has finished counting. The deep-bodied tilapia, which the Egyptians paint everywhere and admire for the way she shelters her young in her mouth, an image of protection they never tired of. The big slow mullet, the catfish, whiskered philosophers of the bottom mud, and the great perch of the deep channel, which can grow longer than the fisherman who is after it, and does, mostly by being patient and unavailable. Some fish are food, some are sacred, and which changes from town to town, so that a dinner in one district is a small scandal in the next. The fishermen keep all the rules in their heads, the way they keep the channels and the currents, and they will tell you the river has room for every opinion. It is very wide, they say, and it keeps moving. Our helmsman exchanges one call with the nearest boat, 2 notes, an answer, and a chuckle in the dark. Everyone is who they should be and where, and the night is in good order. The lamps slide by one, each with its fisherman, each fisherman with his patch of river, his net, his song, his own private negotiation with the dark. The whole economy of Egypt, seen from out here, is just small lights tending the water. Watch the little gold pools go past until they thin out behind us. Count them if you like. Nobody has ever stayed awake to the end of that count. The river dims back to starlight. The last song fades under the sound of the water. They will fish till the morning. You're excused. North of Thebes, the farmland begins, and tonight the farmland is made of sky. The flood has just withdrawn. Every year the river rises, spreads itself across the valley, lays down its gift of black silt, and pulls back slowly like a tide that takes a season. What it leaves behind is the richest soil on earth, and for these few weeks a country of shallow mirrors. The fields hold an inch of still water, and the still water holds the stars. We drift past whole constellations lying in wheat fields. A farmhouse lamp burns at the edge of one of them, a small gold star among the white ones, and somewhere a dog reassures itself twice and goes back to sleep. The farmers call this season the going down of the water, and it is the easy chapter of their year. The hard work is coming, the plowing and sowing, but it is not here yet. For now the land does the work, drinking, settling, becoming ready. Even the oxen are resting. The Egyptians measured the flood each year on stone stairways that walk down into the river, marked in cubits. Too low meant hunger, too high meant ruin, and the right flood, the kind year, meant everything else. This year the marks came in kind, you can tell by the lamplight. Worried farmers do not leave lamps burning, content ones do. It is said that Egypt is the gift of the Nile, and tonight you can watch the gift being given, quietly, an inch of water at a time, a field at a time, with the stars thrown in. Water birds have come down onto the flooded fields by the 1,000 travelers from lands. The Egyptians know only as a way north geese and ducks and waders resting on their long road south. They ride the field water among the drowned stubble and the reflected stars, tucked and silent. A second sky's worth of small sleeping bodies. The farmers leave them be tonight. There is a season for the nets, and this hour is not in it. In a few weeks the surveyors will come with their knotted cords to remeasure every field, because the flood erases the boundaries every single year, and every single year Egypt calmly draws them again. Some say that is where geometry was born, here in the mud, refining the edges of things. The land forgets, the scribes remember, and between the two of them the valley goes on, the barge slides on, the helmsman makes a small correction with the steering oar, more habit than need. The channel here is wide and forgiving, and he has run it 500 times. Watch the mirrored fields go by until they blur. That is allowed. That is in fact the idea. Where the fields meet the river. Egypt has built itself a second river system in miniature by hand. Canals run off the Nile in straight confident lines, and smaller channels run off the canals, and tiny ditches run off the channels, until the water has been divided and subdivided all the way down to the single furrow, the single row of onions, the single thirsty melon. The whole valley is veined with it. From the cliffs in daylight it looks like the leaf of an enormous tree, which in every way that matters it is. Along the banks stand the shadufs, the lifting poles, each one a long beam balanced on a post with a bucket at one end and a counterweight of dried mud at the other. All day men dip and swing them, lifting river to field in an easy rocking rhythm, the kind of work that looks like rest from a distance and is not. At night the shadufs stand idle against the stars, long-necked and patient, a flock of wooden birds waiting for morning. The water in the channels barely moves now, the little wooden gates are shut. A field gets its drink according to the schedule. So many hours of flow, so many days apart. And the schedule is old law, older than most kingdoms, kept in the heads of village elders who can recite every family's water hours back 3 generations. Disputes about it are the most serious kind of argument Egypt has, and the courts treat stealing water like stealing gold, except they consider it worse. A frog occupies the nearest gate, glistening in the moonlight, sole guardian of the night shift. The post suits him. The smell here is wet earth and cut greens and the faint sweetness of the bean fields, the smell of a country quietly digesting its supper. It is a fine machine, the valley, the finest anyone has built, and its moving parts are water, wood, mud, and patience. Tonight the machine rests. The water lies in its channels like the valley's made bed rest with it. The schedule will hold without you. We put in at a village for water and bread, and the village turns out to be worth the stop all by itself. It is a dozen houses of mud brick, the exact color of the land they stand on, because they are the land they stand on, shaped and dried and stacked by the families inside them. The roofs hold ladders, drying onions, and on warm nights like this one, sleepers because the roof is the best room in an Egyptian house from May to September. The bread oven in the shared courtyard is still warm from the evening baking. It is shaped like a beehive and old enough that nobody remembers it being built. The smell of the last loaves hangs around it in a friendly haze. Egyptian bread is dense and honest and slightly gritty, and it is the entire foundation of the entire country, eaten by pharaohs and ferrymen in different rooms, but in the same way gratefully, daily. There's beer too, thick and mild, brewed from the same grain by the same households. Workers are paid in it, children are raised on the weak kind. The Egyptians would tell you reasonably that bread and beer are the same food in 2 speeds. A grandmother sits in a doorway, awake the way old people are awake at night, comfortably on good terms with the hours. She nods at the crew, appraises you in one glance, decides you are somebody's responsibility and therefore fine, and goes back to her thoughts. A donkey stands asleep under the date palm, ears at half-mast, date stones and pot shards, and the day's footprints lie in the dust, the small honest archive of an ordinary day, already being filed by the night. In a niche by the largest doorway stands the household god, Bez, a squat grinning little fellow with a lion's mane and a dancer's bandy legs. Ugly on purpose because his job is to frighten off bad dreams and he takes it seriously. Every house has him or someone like him watching the threshold while the family sleeps. The great gods get the temples, Bez gets the bedrooms, and between the 2 arrangements Egypt considers itself covered. Listen to the village for a moment. A roof sleeper turns over, the oven ticks, a palm frond combs the breeze. 2 houses down, a man murmurs the end of a dream argument, wins it, and goes quiet, satisfied. These are the sounds a place makes when it has been safe for a very long time and expects to continue. The water jars are filled, the bread is wrapped in cloth still oven warm. Small coins of copper change hands without hurry. This village has stood here in one form or another since before the pyramids. It will outlast nearly everything that considers itself important tonight. Carry a little of its calm back aboard with you. They have plenty. At the edge of the village, behind a low wall, the workshops are sleeping too, and their sleep is worth a look. The potter's kiln is still breathing. It was fired this afternoon, a beehive of mud and bricks stacked full of jars and bowls and the big-bellied amphorae that carry everything in Egypt, and now it stands in the dark cooling at its own pace, glowing very faintly at the mouth, exhaling warmth you can feel from 10 steps away. Opening it early ruins the work. The potter knows this, his father knew it, and so the kiln is granted what everything in Egypt is granted eventually, which is time around it. The finished pots stand in moonlit ranks, yesterday's batch and the batch before, pale and round-shouldered, like a crowd waiting calmly for a ferry. Every one of them began as river mud. The Nile carries down the clay, the potter pulls it up, treads it, turns it, and gives it back to the river as jars that will ride the barges, carrying its own water, its own fish, its beer, and honey and oil. The river is drinking from itself all day, every day, out of 10,000 cups it provided. Under the reed awning, the linen looms stand with their work half done, threads stretched and weighted, a pattern paused mid-thought. Egypt's linen is the finest cloth in the world, woven so light in the best grades that it is described accurately as woven air. The weavers will pick up the thought in the morning exactly where they left it. The carpenter's adze hangs on its peg. The day's shavings curl on the floor, smelling of cedar and acacia. A small unfinished stool waits with 3 legs, perfectly patient about the 4th. The Egyptians believe a craftsman's skill is a gift from the gods, and they may be right, but the yard at night tells you the other half. The skill is in the hands, and the hands are asleep, and the work, all of it waits without complaint. The kiln ticks softly as it cools, the only voice in the yard. It is saying what the river says in clay. No hurry, no hurry. Take the advice. It comes from a professional. Past midnight we raise Dendera, where the lady of the place is the goddess of joy, and even her sleeping house looks pleased with itself. Hathor is her name, the Golden One, goddess of music, of love, of dancing, of the pleasant dizziness of beer, of everything that makes a person glad to be in a body. Other gods govern the sun and the dead and the levels of the river. Hathor governs the part of life you would actually choose to be in charge of. Her temple stands close above the bank, and its lamplight lies out across the water like spilled honey. By day, her house is the least solemn sacred place in Egypt. Her priestesses shake the sistrum, the bronze rattle whose shimmer is supposed to please her, and it must because they have been shaking it for 15 centuries. There are drums and clapping and hymns that would be at home at a harvest party, and once a year, Hathor herself in her golden boat sails upriver to visit her husband at his temple, and both banks of the Nile turn out to wave the goddess past, like a bride. Tonight the rattles hang still. The musicians are asleep in the temple town, fingertips healing. From somewhere inside the enclosure comes the smallest possible sound of a single lamp-tending priestess humming to herself, one of Hathor's tunes, half remembered, half improvised, wholly unsupervised. The Egyptians say Hathor is also the lady of the sycamore, who stands at the edge of the western desert and pours water for tired souls arriving from their long crossing. Joy and rest, in their theology, live in the same person. The goddess of the party is also the goddess of the nap afterward. This has always struck Egypt as obvious. Her temple slides behind us, lamplight folding back into the river. If you hear the hum a moment longer than you should, that is allowed. She would consider it a compliment. Sleep is one of hers too, you know, the gentlest instrument she plays. Now comes the long night run, the heart of the journey. Hours of open river with nothing required of anyone. The crew has settled into the night watch, 1 man at the steering oar, 1 at the bow with the sounding pole, the rest asleep among the grain sacks, which they will tell you are the best beds on the river once you learn the trick of them. The trick is being tired, and they always are. Pleasantly the current does the carrying heading downstream north. You ship the sail and let the river run you home. Heading upstream you raise it, because the wind in Egypt blows from the north nearly every day of the year against the current, as if the gods had arranged the country for round trips. The Egyptians notice their word for traveling north is a boat with no sail, their word for south, a boat with one. The water talks along the hull, a continuous soft conversation, gurgle and hush, the most sleep-inducing sound ever discovered by humans, and they have all discovered it. The steering oar creaks in its lashing on a slow cycle, like a very patient cricket. The stern lantern throws a small circle of gold on our wake. Beyond it, the river is black silk, and the sky is the deep working dark of real night, with the Milky Way laid across it like spilled flour on a baker's table. The helmsman knows the stars the way the marshmen know the reeds. The Egyptians call the circumpolar stars the imperishable ones, because they never set, never rest, never leave the sky. The pharaohs hope to become one someday. The helmsman just steers by them, which may be the better relationship. At the bow, the sounding man swings his pole down at long intervals and calls the depth back over his shoulder. 1 low word each time, more confirmation than news. The channel is deep and he knows it, but the calls go on anyway. A slow heartbeat of good information moving sternward through the dark, the river being checked on, found fine, checked on, found fine. Another barge passes us southbound, sail up and fat with the night wind, lantern to lantern across 50 yards of black water. The 2 helmsmen exchange the single word the river requires, a greeting that is also a depth report and a weather report, and a statement that all is well, compressed by 10,000 repetitions into 1 syllable. Then the dark takes them, and we have the reach to ourselves again, far off on the east bank. A jackal makes its remark, and the desert absorbs it. There is nowhere to be, there is nothing to decide. The river has the matter in hand. Sleep is not just permitted on this watch, it is traditional. The river has neighbors, and in the small hours you can hear them keeping house. From the shallows by the far bank comes a sound like a very large gentleman clearing his throat in a bath. The hippos are grazing the night away, as they do, leaving the water after dark to mow the riverside grass in their vast, unhurried fashion. By day there are arguments waiting to happen, and every boatman gives them the room their opinions deserve. By night, at this distance, they are round dark hills that move occasionally, and the sound of enormous chewing carries over the water, steady as a mill. The Egyptians, who fear the hippo in the river, put her in charge of the bedroom Torchlight, the Great One. A standing hippopotamus with a round, kind belly is the guardian of mothers and small children and of sleep itself. Her image stands watch on the headrests and beds of Egypt, on the theory perfectly sound that nothing dangerous argues with the hippopotamus. The most alarming animal on the river spends her nights guarding cradles. Egypt enjoys this kind of joke and makes it in limestone. Somewhere nearer, a crocodile lies along a sandbar like a dropped log, doing what crocodiles do best and longest, which is nothing magnificently. He too has a temple or two downstream where his cousins are fed honey cakes by priests and wear, this is true, small golden earrings. Egypt has decided it is wiser to be the crocodile's host than his neighbor, and the arrangement has held for a long time. The smaller river folk are at their hours too. An otter family works the margin of the reeds, sleek commas of motion, fishing the night shallows with an efficiency the fisherman would resent if it were anyone else. Soft-shelled turtles hang in the warm top water like drifting plates. A genet has come down from the palms to drink, all spots and caution, and a mongoose is somewhere being busy, because a mongoose always is over it all. The night birds run their quiet errands. An owl crosses the river in perfect silence. Low, like a thought-passing plovers, call positions along the sandbars. The Egyptians watch birds the way later. Peoples will watch the sky for weather, reading the year in their comings and goings, and they put birds in their writing itself, owls and ibises and swallows perched in the middle of words, so that every Egyptian sentence has wings somewhere in it. The barge keeps to the deep channel, the neighbors keep to their shallows, and the night divides the river between everyone fairly, as it has every night since rivers began. The chewing fades behind us, a last soft bathhouse rumble, far off, like furniture being moved in a distant room by someone trying to be quiet about it. The big ones are at their supper, the small ones are in their reeds. Everything on the river is exactly where the night expects it. So are you. Close your eyes. Torchlight has the watch. In the deep middle of the night we pass Abydos, and Abydos is awake in the gentlest way a town can be. The hillside above the river is scattered with small lights, hundreds of them lamps left burning in little whitewashed chapels and shrines, each one tended by some family, some guild, some traveler who wanted a light kept here on their behalf. Abydos is the holiest ground in Egypt. This is where Osiris sleeps, the god who died and woke, and half the country would like a lamp burning somewhere near him, just in case proximity counts. The hill says it probably does. The story is the oldest one Egypt tells. Osiris was the good king, and he was betrayed and broken and scattered, and his wife Isis gathered him every piece with a patience that has been the model of patience ever since, and bound him whole, and he woke not to this world but to the next one. Where he reigns, every Egyptian hopes to follow him through that waking, which means, and Egypt says this plainly, that death is a night, and a night is a thing you get up from. Pilgrims come here from the whole length of the river, on boats much humbler than ours, to leave a stone, a jar, a prayer, a lamp. The wish is always some version of the same wish. Remember me, keep a light on. The hillside is the country's collected Goodnight, burning quietly at all hours. The priests of Osiris perform his mysteries here once a year. The death, the search, the finding, the waking, acted out by torchlight while the crowd weeps and cheers on schedule. Tonight there is no festival. There is just the hill, holding its hundreds of small flames steady in the still air, doing the year's plain work of keeping faith. Our crew, not a sentimental body of men, go quiet along this reach. The helmsman dips his head to the hill the way he would to a senior colleague. The lamps slide slowly off our stern. A hillside of small-kept promises, he sleeps the god, and the lamps watch over him. And morning is part of the story. It always was, borrow the arrangement. It is well tested. Below Abydos, we overtake the grain fleet moored for the night along the western bank, and for a while we sail down a street of lanterns. 24 barges ride at their lines, big ones, deep-bellied, loaded to the rails with the harvest of the southern districts, and every stern carries a lantern, so the fleet lies on the dark water like a necklace someone set down carefully and meant to come back for. The light from each lamp finds the sacks, the coiled rope, the awnings, and gives every workaday thing aboard a small gold importance. This is Egypt's bloodstream, moving. The grain goes north to the granaries, and from the granaries it goes out again as wages, because Egypt pays in bread and beer to the temple staff and the tomb builders and the soldiers and the scribes who count it all. The scribes ride with the fleet, and their reed pens and tally boards are stowed beside them while they sleep. Every sack aboard has been counted twice and will be counted 3 times more. Egypt counts the way other nations pray thoroughly and with feeling. The crews are asleep on deck on the cargo itself, the world's most comfortable strategic reserve. A watchman per barge sits by his lantern. As we pass, each one in turn lifts a hand to our helmsman. 24 small unhurried salutes down the whole golden line, the night shift acknowledging the night shift. There is no sound from the fleet but water on hulls, and one man somewhere midline snoring with real commitment, a sound the river accepts without judgment as it accepts everything. Some of these barges will go on past the granaries to the temple quays. Because the gods of Egypt are, among their other duties, the largest landlords in the country, and the harvest of their estates comes home by water like everyone else's. Others carry the king's share tallied against each district's flood marks, because the taxes here are set by the river itself. A generous flood, a fuller levy, a lean one, mercied by arithmetic. Egypt may be the only country that lets a river write its budget, and it has worked for 20 dynasties. One barge rides apart from the line, older than the rest, patched and proud, a family boat worked by 3 generations at once. The grandfather sleeps amidships in the place of honor, on the softest sacks. He has made this run. The crews will tell you more than 100 times, and the river knows his boat, the way a dog knows a particular footstep. Such things are said often on the Nile, and believed and possibly true. In a few days, this grain will be bred in 1,000 houses that have never seen the field it grew in. The river joins them all, field to oven, south to north, stranger to stranger, one long table. The last lantern slips behind us, and the dark closes softly back over the water. The wealth of Egypt sleeps on the river in plain sight, guarded by lamplight and good manners. It is safe. So are you. On we go. Toward the hour when the night turns over and starts thinking about morning, we pass the city of Thoth, and it would be impolite to pass the moon's own town without a nod. Thoth is the scribe of the gods, the one with the ibis head, the keeper of the calendar, the inventor of writing, the auditor of eternity. When a soul is weighed in the next world, it is Thoth who stands by with his pen and writes down the result accurately, because he has never once fudged a figure. The Egyptians gave their cleverest god the quietest job, record-keeping, and they gave him the moon to govern, the lamp you can read by. His city keeps a sacred lake inside the temple walls, a perfect rectangle of still water where the priests wash before their hours. Tonight the lake is doing its other job, the one nobody assigned it, holding a copy of the sky. The crescent moon lies on the black water as neat as a clipped fingernail, and the stars around it barely tremble. Thoth's lake is the cleanest mirror in Egypt, and the sky checks itself in it nightly. In the trees by the water, his birds are roosting, the white ibis, hundreds of them folded up for the night like clean laundry. The ibis walks the shallows with its curved beak probing, precise, methodical, and the Egyptians decided it must be taking notes, so the bird became the god's bird, kept and fed and pampered here by the thousand. They sleep with their heads tucked under their wings, the world's most honored filing clerks off duty. Somewhere inside, in the house of life, the temple's library, the night copyist is at work by lamplight, renewing an old text one careful sign at a time, ibises and eyes and little kneeling figures flowing off his pen. Books wear out. Knowledge is recopied or lost. Egypt chose recopying 30 centuries before anyone thought to thank her. The moon writes its silver line across the lake. Thoth keeps the ledgers. The records of the night are in good order, and you're not needed at the office initial, here against the pillow. That concludes the day's entries. Moored alone in a quiet reach, we pass a sight that wakes the helmsman's tongue, a barge the size of a small island, and lying along its deck a single stone. It is an obelisk, a whole one, cut in one piece, riding north to some temple forecourt where it will stand for the next few thousand years, catching the first and last light of every day. Tonight it lies on its back under the moon like a sleeping giant being ferried home, which is close enough to the truth. The helmsman tells it the way rivermen tell things, slowly, with the good parts in the right places. Far south, he says, past the first cataract, there is a place where the earth turns to granite, rose-colored, hard as the god's own teeth. The stone men go at it with balls of harder rock, pounding, patient as water, and they free the great needles from the ground the way you would free a splinter. Carefully, over months. He has seen one still attached in its trench, he says, a king's obelisk that cracked and was abandoned, and the quarry keeps it like a lesson. Even Egypt does not always get what Egypt wants. Then the flood, the levering of the stone onto a barge built for nothing else, and the slow ride north, the heaviest cargo on the river moving at the speed of the gentlest current, thousands of tons riding on water. The river carries it the way it carries the fisherman's lamp, indifferently, easily. Weight means nothing to a thing that carried the flood. How do they raise it at the other end, you ask? And the helmsman smiles, the smile of a man who has been asked before. Sand, he says. Ramps and ropes and sand let out slowly from under it, and the stone settles upright the way an old man settles into his chair. Probably, he adds. He is a riverman. His job ends at the quay. The lantern light slides along the granite as we pass, and the carved king's name flickers gold for a moment, then lets the dark have it back. The barge crew that tends this giant is asleep on the bank beside it. A small camp of mats and embers, with one watchman sitting where he can lean against the stone itself. It is, he would tell you, the safest post in Egypt. Nobody steals an obelisk. The thing cannot be hurried, hidden, or argued with. And so the watch consists of keeping the fire decent and being in a general way present. He looks settled there, his back against 400 tons of patience. Our own cargo of grain sacks seems suddenly very portable, very light, a load the river hardly notices. The helmsman pats the rail anyway, the way you would pat a horse that has been compared unfavorably to an elephant. Every boat does its work, he says. The river carries them all at the same price. The stone is in no hurry. It has an appointment with about 40 centuries, and it will keep it lying down tonight. A good example for everyone. The helmsman says that part too. On the western bank, a broad canal opens away into the dark, lined with gardens, and the helmsman nods at it the way you nod at the turnoff to somewhere pleasant. You're not going tonight. That way, he says, lies the Faiyum, and his voice does the thing Egyptian voices do around that word. Softens, like a man mentioning his favorite aunt. It is a green bowl in the desert, a whole province of orchards and vineyards watered by this one channel, with a great lake lying at the bottom of it, broad as a sea, where the king keeps a palace for fishing trips and the pelicans hold their parliaments. The Egyptians love the place the way you love an unexpected gift. The desert is supposed to be empty. Instead, a day's sail west, there are fig trees, there are vineyards that send the king his best wine, jars stamped with the year in the garden, because Egypt labels everything worth labeling. There are kitchen gardens of melons and cucumbers and lettuce, onions in ranks, beans in their season, and the bee yards row after row of clay hives, because the Faiyum's honey is famous, and the Egyptians put honey in everything from bread to medicine to the offerings of the gods. The lake at the heart of it is Sobex, the crocodile god's own water, and his temple town sits on its shore where the sacred crocodiles drowse in their pools, and are hand-fed the best of everything, wearing their gold earrings, the best insurance policy ever issued in reptile form. At this hour, the helmsman says, the whole bowl will be quiet. Mist on the lake, the vine rows holding their breath, the hives murmuring at a frequency only the bees take seriously, a fox trotting the orchard wall inspecting the night's unpaid steward. We hold to the main channel, north, and the garden country slides away west into the dark, smelling faintly of green even from here. Egypt keeps an orchard behind the desert, the way a sensible house keeps preserves in the cupboard. Sleep sweeter knowing it is there, the bees have the night shift covered. We pass the city of Memphis in the smallest hours, and the city is asleep on its roofs. Whole families lie under the open sky on woven mats, grandparents at the parapet, children in the middle where they cannot wander, the cat at the foot of everything awake employed from the river. The rooftops are a dark quilt stitched with the occasional lamp, and over the quilt hangs the entire sky, enormous, slowly turning. The Egyptians sleep with their heads on carved wooden rests in the universe overhead, and they have opinions about that universe, good ones. The sky, they say, is the goddess Nut, arched over the world on her fingers and toes, her body crowded with stars. Every evening she swallows the sun, and all night it travels through her. And every morning she gives birth to it again in the east, good as new. The sun you saw set this evening is in there now, somewhere on its way. On a temple roof above the city, the star priests are awake, the hour watchers with their sighting tools and their water clock dripping the night away, one measured drop at a time. They mark the rising of each Deccan star and call the hours softly down the stairs. It is the gentlest job in Egypt to watch the sky, note what rises, whisper the time to people who are mostly asleep. Memphis is the old capital, the balance point of the two lands, and its great god is Ptah, the maker, the craftsman of the universe, who the Egyptians say thought the world and then spoke it, the way their own craftsmen see the chair inside the cedar before the first cut. His temple here is so central to everything that its name, the house of the soul of Ptah, said quickly in Egyptian, may be where the very word Egypt comes from. The whole country possibly is named after one workshop. Down by the harbor, the day's cargo sleeps in ranks under guard, cedar from Lebanon smelling of distant mountains, copper from Sinai, wine jars from the delta, linen bales bound for everywhere. Memphis is where the river's freight changes hands, and even its warehouses have a settled, prosperous breathing in the dark, the sound of goods worth guarding being competently guarded. The water clock drips, the Nile slides somewhere, a baby fusses and is settled, the oldest lullaby in the world being improvised again in Egyptian. You're lying in the stern of a barge on the long body of the river under the long body of the sky between one civilization's bedtime and its breakfast. Traffic on both rivers is light. The current of each is steady. The helmsman hums two notes to himself. The same two at long intervals. The grain sacks have accepted your shape. Nut holds the sun safe till morning. The priests are keeping the hours, so you do not have to nothing up there. Needs your help. It is all rising on schedule. On the desert shelf above Memphis stands the oldest big thing human beings ever built, and it is having another quiet night. It is a pyramid, but not the smooth kind. It rises in 6 great steps, a stairway squared off and stacked by someone thinking very clearly a very long time ago that someone had a name, and Egypt, which forgets nothing, still knows it. Imhotep, the king's architect, the first person in recorded history to look at a pile of mud brick, the way buildings had always been made, and decide to try it in stone, all the way up as high as the ropes and the ramps and the nerve would go. Nobody had done it before. There was no manual, no precedent, no older builder to ask. Every course of stone in that silhouette was, when it was laid, the highest stone course in the history of the world. The thing was an experiment from the ground up, and the experiment is still standing 12 centuries later as our barge goes by, which is the kind of test result any builder would frame. The Egyptians made Imhotep a legend for it, then kept promoting him. Scribe, priest, healer, sage, eventually, and he is the only commoner who ever managed this. They made him a god, the patron of scribes and doctors. Students still pour a drop of water from their bowls in his honor before they write. The first engineer became the first saint of homework. His pyramid was built as a stairway, they say, so the king inside could climb to the imperishable stars, the ones that never set. The steps face the sky and wait. Stone is good at waiting. It is, in fact, the best there has ever been at it. Around the great steps. The rest of the plateau sleeps too. Courts and chapels and the long enclosure wall, pale as linen in the moonlight. The whole first draft of monumental Egypt, still legible, still proud of itself, and entitled to be. 1,200 years of nights have rolled over those steps so far, every one of them ending in a morning. This night is no different. The stairway will hold. Climb down from the day at your own pace. You wake or half wake because the helmsman has touched your shoulder, and he does not do that for nothing. There, on the western horizon, sharp against the star field, stand the pyramids. Even now, even from the river, even in the dark, they reorganize the sky around themselves. 3 mountains with perfect manners. The moonlight lies on their faces, and the faces are still smooth in this age, cased in white limestone that gives the moon something to work with. They look less like buildings and like geometry that has been told to stand still. They are already ancient tonight. That is the part that quiets people. The pharaohs who built them lie 1,000 years in the past of the Egypt we are sailing through. The scribes on our barge think of them roughly the way you think of the oldest thing you know. Egyptian tourists scratch their names on the old stones, complaining that things were built better in the old days. Everything has always been long ago. The Egyptians say the shape is a sunbeam made solid, the slanting light you see when the sun breaks through clouds, frozen and given to a king to climb. Whatever it is, it has worked. The kings inside intended to last forever, and so far, so good. Below the 3 of them facing the river, the great lion with the king's face keeps his own watch, paws out, chin level, eyes on the east. He has the best job in Egypt and the longest. Watch the horizon, wait for the sun. He is already old tonight, already half mysterious, and the sand creeps up on him whenever the wind spends a few centuries blowing from the south, and every so often some prince clears it away again and is very pleased with himself. The lion outweights them all, princes and sand alike. Near the pyramids, in pits lined with fine stone, whole ships lie buried, full-size river boats of cedar, dismantled plank by plank and folded away beside the kings like travel clothes packed for a long trip. The dead pharaoh, the thinking goes, will want to sail. Of course he will. In Egypt, even eternity is a boat ride, and no one here has ever imagined a heaven you could not reach by water. The barge does not stop. The river bends us slowly past, and the pyramids turn with infinite slowness, showing one face, then an edge, then another face, performing the one trick a triangle knows perfectly. The helmsman watches them go by with the expression he uses for the imperishable stars. Then he checks his channel markers and goes back to work, because grain does not deliver itself, and even eternity is best viewed from a well-steered boat. Watch them shrink behind us, white and patient under the wheel of the sky. 4,000 years from tonight, people will still be doing exactly what you're doing now, looking, going quiet, closing their eyes a little after. On the east bank, where the river begins to braid itself toward the delta, lies the City of the Sun, and the City of the Sun is, at this hour, the most patient place on earth. Heliopolis, the Egyptians on, is where the sun has his oldest house. His priests are the most learned in Egypt, astronomers and calendar keepers. The people who decided how long a year is and were nearly exactly right, and in their sanctuary they keep the benben, a pyramid-shaped stone, the holiest rock in the country. It marks the spot, they say, where the first sunrise happened, where the Creator stood on the first mound of earth as it rose from the waters of nothing, and the light came on for the very first time. Every pyramid in Egypt, every obelisk tip is a copy of that stone. The whole skyline of monuments we have sailed past tonight is, in the end, one shape repeated, the shape of the first morning. The night is at its darkest and oldest now, and in the sun city the lamps are kept deliberately low, because this is the hour of the long expecting, somewhere below the horizon. The Egyptians know exactly what is happening. The sun god's night boat is in the last hours of its long passage under the world, through the dark river beneath all rivers. It has been a hard road, as it is every night. There are enemies down there, and the great serpent of chaos waits at the narrowest hour. And every night, every single night, the boat's crew sees it off, and the prow comes up swinging toward the east. The priests do not doubt the outcome. Their whole theology is a kept schedule, but they wake early anyway. Wash in the sacred lake, dress, and stand ready to sing the sun up over the horizon, as their fathers did, as their fathers' fathers did, on the working theory that gratitude should be punctual. In the sanctuary garden stands a tree the priests call the Isht, the sacred Persi, on whose leaves the gods are said to write the names and the years of the kings. One leaf to a rain, a library that blossoms, and somewhere in this precinct, the stories say, the Bennu bird alighted at the world's first morning, the gray heron that the Greeks will one day garble into the phoenix, the bird that ends and begins. Heliopolis is the city of first times. Its whole business is the fact that things start and start again. The schoolrooms of the temple are empty at this hour, benches and worn floor, and the smell of papyrus dust, where the astronomer priests train the boys who will keep the calendar after them. Centuries of mornings have been calculated in that room in advance, eclipses and festivals, and the rising of the dog star that announces the flood. The future is on file here. The night is just a part of it currently passing through. The eastern sky, if you look very carefully, has begun the smallest possible negotiation with gray. Not yet, though, there is night left, a good measure of it. And the boat under the world still has miles to go. Let the priests keep the vigil, they are professionals. The sun has never once been laid on their watch. In the last hours of the night, the river begins to come apart, gently, the way a rope comes apart into threads. This is the delta, where the one Nile becomes many, wandering apart through the flattest, greenest country in the world on their separate ways to the sea. The barge takes the western branch, and the world goes soft. Mist lies on the water in long, quiet shoals. Reed islands drift past, each one an apartment building of sleeping birds, herons folded like closed umbrellas, ducks with their heads filed away under wings, ibises balance on one leg, saving the other for tomorrow. This is the hour the Egyptians call the time before the two lands wake, and even the river seems to lower its voice. The water is the color of the sky, and the sky is the color of the inside of a shell, a rose gray that no one has ever quite gotten into a painting, though Egypt has been trying for 3,000 years. Far ahead, beyond the last reed banks, the gray-green is waiting, the sea. We will not reach it, and we do not need to. River's End journeys, the Egyptians would tell you, do not. They believed every sunset became a sunrise somewhere else. Every ending was a door, and they built their whole civilization on the idea that what sleeps wakes. Each branch of the river here has its own name and its own reputation, its own ports and pilots and particular moods, and the Delta people argue the merits of their branches the way mountain people argue about passes. Down the easternmost branch lie the harbor towns that look toward Byblos and Crete, where the seagoing ships ride at anchor, big-shouldered strangers smelling of tar and elsewhere. The river ends by opening every door it has. Here, too, in the deep marsh, the goddess of the delta keeps her old sanctuary, Wadjet, the Green Lady, the cobra who rears on the brow of every pharaoh's crown. All that royal fire starts here, in the quietest, softest, most birdsong-ridden country Egypt owns. The delta keeps the secret cheerfully. Power, like everything else, is born in the reeds. The crew begins to stir by habit, not need. The helmsman hands off the oar to the morning man with 3 words and lies down in the warm spot. The night left him. A fish makes a ring on the still water. The ring widens, taking its time, and the mist takes the ring, and the morning takes the mist. The first birds wake somewhere off in the reeds and think better of it, and tuck back in. That is the correct response. The day can manage its own opening act. The last settlement we pass is barely a village at all, a handful of reed houses on a mud island, with the nets hung up on poles like laundry and the smell of the sea arriving faintly from the north. A guest still some miles up the road. This is the waterman's country. The Delta people live with wet feet and do not mind. Their houses are reed, their boats are reed, their floors are mats of reed over mud, and when the flood comes high, they simply move everything up a few hands' widths and carry on, an annual negotiation that both sides have stopped taking personally. They catch fish, they cut papyrus, they keep ducks, they trap eels in woven baskets, and they trade it all upriver for grain and onions and gossip. The nets are the town's wardrobe and its fortune. They hang in the mist now in long, soft curves, mended and remended, every knot tied by somebody, every hole the memory of some particular fish. A man's nets here are his biography. One lamp burns in one doorway, somebody's grandmother again, or her Delta cousin awake before the birds, getting the fire going under the first flatbread, because the boats will go out at gray light and the men do not row well on empty stomachs, and never have. A duck flotilla rides at anchor by the bank, every head stowed, the whole fleet rising and falling a fingernail's height with the breathing of the water. By the largest hut, the eel traps are stacked in a neat tower, woven funnels of reed, clever as anything in Egypt. The eel swims in because the way in is easy, and stays because the way out requires thinking backward, which eels, fortunately for this village, prefer not to do. The traps go down at dusk and come up at dawn, and the night does the fishing while the fishermen sleep. The most restful industry ever devised. Salt comes up this far on the north wind, and with it, on some nights, the sound of the sea itself, a long, soft breath at the bottom of hearing. The villagers do not call it anything, it is just a noise the north makes, the way the frogs are the noise of the south. They live between the two sounds on their mud island, perfectly placed, The Egyptians upriver, the bread and granary people like to joke about the Delta folk, and the Delta folk who are doing fine and know something about eels the south will never know, let them. The hamlet slides into the mist behind us, lamp last, like a final small star setting. The sea air freshens by a breath. The water under the hull has begun, very faintly, to taste of salt and morning. Nearly there now, nearly nowhere at all, which was the destination all along. And now at the very rim of the world, the schedule the priests were waiting on begins to be kept. The east goes from gray to pearl to the faintest workable gold. Somewhere under that line, the sun god's boat has won its nightly argument and is rising toward the surface of the sky with the day in its hold, cargo intact, crew tired and victorious, the great serpent seen off once more as per the arrangement. The Egyptians have sung this moment for so long that the words are smooth as river stones. The doors of the horizon are opened, the hymn goes, He comes forth justified. The whole country east of us is, at this minute, beginning to stir toward the rooftops and the temple stairs to say some version of it, from full choirs at Heliopolis down to one farmer on one dike saying it the short way with his face in the light and his eyes shut. Light is the first wage of the Egyptian day, and it is paid to everyone, on time without deduction. They genuinely talk about it this way. The sun does not rise in Egypt. It returns like a boat, like a flood, like everything here on its circuit, faithful. A single far-off sail has caught the gold before anything else. One bright thorn of light on the gray water, some earlier riser than us bound out on the first reach of the day shift. The mist is lifting off the water in slow scarves, reporting to wherever mist spends its days. The last star stands down with the satisfaction of a watchman whose relief has actually shown up. For everyone else, the day is starting. For you, traveler, it is the other thing. You have been awake all night in the gentlest way down the whole length of the oldest country, and the morning is your signal not to rise but to finish settling. The sun will take it from here. That has always been the deal. Lay your head back down. You have seen the boat in your watch is over. The barge is moored now, in a still backwater with the mist around it, like bedding, and the journey is as finished as it needs to be. The grain will go on to the granary without you. The crew will eat bread from that village whose name you never asked, and tell mild lies about the speed of the trip, and turn around and do it all again. Upstream, this time with the north wind in the one sail, the river will hold them the whole way. It holds everyone. It has never once dropped anybody for being heavy with sleep. Look back down the long dark we came through. The temple columns are still standing in their torchlight, the frogs are still singing in the papyrus, the fields are still holding their stars, the villages their warm ovens, the pyramids their moonlight. None of it stops when you stop watching. That is the comfort of rivers and of countries like this one. They go on carefully whether or not anyone is awake to supervise. The Egyptians wrote love poems to this river, and hymns and tax records which are their own kind of love poem. They wrote that the Nile rises in the dark, in secret, in caves no one has found, and arrives every year without being asked. A faithful thing, the most faithful thing, the last star is going out over the masthead, an imperishable one, which means it is not going out at all. It is only giving the sky to the morning and stepping back the way the night does. The way this voice will, in a moment, the water under the hull says the thing it has been saying all night. Slow, slow, slow. The lantern at the stern gutters once and rests. The mist settles in close, drawn up to the gunwales like a blanket, and the boat rocks the smallest possible amount, just enough to prove the river is still holding it. It is holding you too. Sleep now. The river runs all night, every night, and it has never once needed help. Good night.